In the remote high desert of New Mexico Territory, 1879, a wealthy cattleman named Cole Thatcher had built himself a fortress of solitude. For 5 years, he'd traded his gunslinger reputation for the quiet of wide pastures and hard-earned peace. His ranch sprawled across thousands of acres, a testament to careful investments, and a man who understood that true power came not from the speed of your draw, but from the depth of your resolve. When Cole rode into the dusty mining town of Calico Junction that fateful September morning, he expected nothing more than supplies and a quick return to his sanctuary. Instead, he witnessed something that would shatter his carefully constructed world. A pregnant woman being struck down behind the general store by a man wearing a deputy's badge. That woman was Mabel Quinn, and her story would become legend. But would love be enough to save them both when the law itself became their enemy? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The sun breaks over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, painting the vast New Mexico landscape in shades of amber and rust. Miles of open range stretch toward distant mesas, interrupted only by weathered fence posts and the occasional windmill turning, lazily in the morning breeze. This is Cole Thatcher's domain, 15,000 acres of high desert prairie that he's carved from wilderness through sweat, intelligence, and the kind of patience that comes from understanding the land's rhythms. The ranch house sits on a gentle rise, constructed of native stone and timber built to last generations. Unlike the hastily erected structures in nearby settlements, this home speaks of permanence, of a man who planned to stay. Wide porches wrap around 3 sides, their overhanging roofs providing shelter from both sun and sudden mountain storms. Cottonwoods planted with care cast shade over the main yard, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. Cole Thatcher emerges from the house, coffee mug in hand, moving with the deliberate grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. At 38, he carries himself with quiet authority, tall and lean, weathered by years of honest work under the desert sun. His hair, once black as midnight, now shows silver at the temples, and lines around his grey eyes speak of squinting into countless sunrises, just like this one. There's something about his stillness that suggests coiled strength, the way a mountain cat rests but never truly relaxes. He wasn't always a rancher. Those who knew him in his younger days remember different names whispered in saloons from Dodge City to Tombstone. The Phantom, they called him, for his ability to appear and disappear like smoke. His reputation was built on precision rather than flash. A man who could settle disputes with words when possible, but whose hand never wavered when steel was the only language some men understood. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. 5 years ago, after a particularly brutal confrontation in El Paso that left 3 men dead, and Cole questioning everything he'd become, he'd made a decision that surprised everyone who knew him. He'd taken his accumulated winnings, carefully invested over years of calculated risks, and purchased this remote spread in the high country. The sellers thought him mad, paying premium prices for land that seemed good for nothing but grazing. A few hardy cattle and watching the wind blow, but Cole saw something others missed. The land had water, precious springs fed by mountain runoff that never failed, even in the driest years. The grass, though sparse, was nutritious, perfect for raising hardy stock that could thrive in harsh conditions. More importantly, the isolation suited a man who'd grown weary of the constant need to prove himself, tired of the weight of reputation that followed him like a shadow. In his desk drawer, wrapped carefully in oiled leather, lies a Colt .45 that once served as his closest companion. He hasn't touched it in 3 years, though his hands still remember its weight, the smooth action of the cylinder, the perfect balance that made it an extension of his will. Some nights, when the wind howls through the canyon and memories refuse to stay buried, he considers throwing it in the river, but something always stops him. Not nostalgia for his violent past, but the pragmatic understanding that in this territory, where law is often nothing more than whoever carries the biggest stick, complete pacifism can be a luxury few can afford. Miguel Santos approaches from the horse barn, his weathered face creased by 40 years of desert sun. He's worked for Cole since the beginning, drawn by wages that were fair and a boss who treated his men with respect rather than condescension. Behind him walks old Pete Garrison, a former cavalry scout whose knowledge of the territory's hidden trails and water sources proved invaluable in building the ranch's success. "Mornin', boss," Miguel calls out, removing his hat briefly in greeting. "That black stallion's favoring his left front again. Might want to keep him close to the barn today." Cole nods, appreciating Miguel's attention to detail. Good men were harder to find than good horses, and he'd learned to value both. "Have Doc Matthews take a look when he comes through next week. No sense pushing him if he's not sound." Pete spits into the dust, his pale blue eyes scanning the horizon with the perpetual vigilance of a man who'd spent too many years watching. "For Apache war parties. Riders came through yesterday evening, boss. 3 of them asking questions about you. Didn't like the feel of it." The news doesn't surprise Cole. His past has a way of catching up, no matter how far he runs or how peaceful his intentions. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggested they weren't admirers of your retirement," Pete replies with dry humor. "Mentioned something about a job down in Mesilla. Said there was good money for a man with your particular talents." Cole takes a long sip of his coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground him in the present moment. The temptation is always there. Easy money for doing what he'd once been exceptionally good at, but that path leads nowhere except to more graves and more sleepless nights. "Tell anyone who comes asking that Cole Thatcher is just a rancher now," he says quietly. Nothing more, nothing less. Miguel and Pete exchange glances, the kind of wordless communication that develops between men who've worked together through seasons of drought and plenty. They understand their boss's desire for peace, but they also recognize the steel beneath his calm exterior. In this territory, reputation is both burden and protection, and Cole's past serves as an invisible fence around his property, keeping most trouble at bay. The morning routine continues with the comfortable rhythm of men who know their work. Cattle need checking, fences require mending, and the endless task of preparing for winter demands attention. Cole finds peace in these simple tasks, the honest satisfaction of building something rather than tearing it down. As the sun climbs higher, Cole makes his decision about the trip to Calico Junction. They need supplies, coffee, flour, ammunition, for hunting, and various hardware items that can only be obtained in town. It's a journey he makes monthly, though he takes no pleasure in it. Towns make him uncomfortable now, full of noise and the kind of petty conflicts that seem magnified in small spaces. He saddles Thunder, a powerful bay gelding with the stamina needed for the long ride to town and back. The horse responds to his touch with the easy familiarity of a long-time partnership, ears forward with anticipation of the journey ahead. As he prepares to leave, Cole reflects on the choices that brought him to this moment. 5 years of careful living, of building something worthwhile instead of simply surviving from one gunfight to the next. The ranch represents more than property. It's proof that a man can change, that the sins of the past don't have to define the future. But as he rides out through the ranch gate, something feels different about this morning. The air carries a tension he can't quite identify, and Thunder seems to sense it too, stepping more carefully than usual. In his years as a gunfighter, Cole learned to trust such instincts. They'd kept him alive when logic and skill weren't enough. The trail to Calico Junction winds through spectacular country, past red rock formations that tell stories millions of years in the making. Usually, the beauty of the landscape soothes Cole's spirit, reminding him why he chose this isolated corner of the territory. Today, however, his mind keeps returning to Pete's words about the riders and their questions. Change is coming. He can feel it in his bones like an old injury predicting rain. The question isn't whether his peaceful existence will be challenged, but when and how. As thunder carries him steadily toward town, Cole prepares himself for whatever awaits, hoping his past won't destroy the future he's worked so hard to build. The irony isn't lost on him. A man who once lived by violence now, praying for continued peace. But that's the nature of redemption, he supposes. It requires constant vigilance, not against external enemies, but against the darker impulses that once defined him. As the outskirts of Calico Junction come into view, Cole straightens in his saddle, unconsciously checking the placement of his sidearm. Old habits die hard, especially when they've kept you alive. What he doesn't know is that this routine trip will shatter his carefully constructed world, forcing him to confront not just his violent past, but the man he's trying to become. Calico Junction clings to life like a stubborn weed in rocky soil. What began as a mining camp during the silver boom has evolved into a permanent settlement, though permanent might be too generous a word for the collection of weathered buildings that line the single main street. The general store, saloon, hotel, and handful of other businesses served the surrounding ranches, and the few mines still producing enough ore to justify their existence. Cole guides Thunder down the dusty street, noting the usual collection of horses tied to hitching posts and the handful of people going about their morning business. Mrs. Henderson sweeps the porch of her boarding house with the same mechanical precision she's employed for the past decade. Tom Bradley loads grain sacks onto his wagon outside Miller's store, preparing for the journey back to his hardscrabble farm in the foothills. The normalcy of the scene should be comforting, but that persistent unease continues to gnaw at Cole's consciousness. Something feels off, though he can't identify what. Perhaps it's simply the accumulated weight of too many towns, too many mornings when routine shattered into violence without warning. He dismounts in front of Bradley's general store, tying Thunder's reins to the hitching post with practiced efficiency. The big gelding immediately drops his head to investigate a small pile of spilled grain, content to wait while his master conducts business inside. The store's interior offers relief from the morning heat, though the familiar smells of leather, tobacco, and various preserved goods create their own oppressive atmosphere. Samuel Bradley looks up from his ledger, his weathered face creasing into the professional smile of a man who's learned to read his customers quickly. "Morning, Mr. Thatcher. What brings you to town today?" Cole produces his carefully written list, the product of Miguel's precise inventory of their needs. "The usual supplies, Sam. Coffee, flour, salt, some ammunition for the Winchester, and I need those fence staples we talked about last month." As Bradley begins gathering the requested items, Cole's attention drifts to the conversations happening around him. Two men near the pickle barrel discuss the failing prospects of the Lucky Strike mine. A woman examines bolts of fabric while her young son fidgets impatiently beside her. Normal small-town interactions, the kind that once made him feel claustrophobic, but now represent the peaceful life he's chosen. "Heard you had some visitors yesterday," Bradley mentions casually as he weighs out coffee beans. "Strangers asking questions about you." Cole's hand stills on the counter. "What kind of questions?" "Oh, the usual curiosity about a man with your reputation choosing to settle down. Nothing threatening, mind you. Just seemed odd, them being so interested in your business." Before Cole can respond, raised voices from outside draw his attention. Through the store's front window, he sees a small crowd gathering near the alley between the general store and the millinery shop. The voices carry an edge of excitement mixed with something darker, the tone people adopt when witnessing something they know they should stop, but lack the courage to intervene. Cole moves to the window, his instincts sharpening. In the narrow alley, partially hidden from Main Street view, a man in a deputy's badge has a woman pressed against the wooden wall of the building. Even from this distance, Cole can see the woman's obvious pregnancy and the way she cowers before her attacker. "Who is that?" Cole asks quietly. Bradley joins him at the window, his expression growing troubled. That's Deputy Frank Quinn and his wife Mabel. He's got a reputation for being heavy-handed, especially with her. The woman, Mabel, raises her hands protectively as the deputy's voice grows louder, though Cole can't make out the words from this distance. What he can see clearly is the fear in her posture, the desperate way she tries to make herself smaller, less of a target. "Someone should intervene," Cole says, his voice carrying an edge that makes Bradley step back involuntarily. "Now, Mr. Thatcher, that's between a man and his wife. Ain't none of our business what happens between married folks." Cole's jaw tightens. He's heard those words before, the comfortable excuse that allows good people to ignore evil when it wears the mask of legality or social convention. The deputy's hand rises, and Cole sees Mabel flinch in anticipation of the blow. "Finish gathering." "My supplies," Cole says, his voice deadly quiet. "I'll be back directly." He steps outside into the bright morning sunlight, his movements casual but purposeful. The small crowd of onlookers notices his approach, and several people begin to drift away, suddenly finding pressing business elsewhere. They know his reputation, understand that Cole Thatcher's involvement transforms any situation into something potentially explosive. As he draws closer to the alley, the deputy's words become audible. "Told you to stay home, you worthless cow. But no, you had to embarrass me in front of the whole town, waddling around like some fat sow." Cole rounds the corner into the alley just as Deputy Quinn's hand connects with Mabel's face, the sharp crack echoing off the wooden walls. She staggers, one hand pressed to her cheek, the other protectively cradling her swollen belly. "That's enough." Cole's voice cuts through the morning air like a blade, quiet but carrying absolute authority. Deputy Quinn spins around, his face flushed with anger and something that might be drink, despite the early hour. "This ain't your concern, Thatcher. This is between me and my wife." Cole takes in the scene with the rapid assessment that once kept him alive in dozens of similar confrontations. Quinn is drunk or close to it, his deputy's badge crooked on his shirt, his gun hand twitching with nervous energy. Mabel presses herself against the wall, her green eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "I'm making it my concern," Cole replies, stepping closer. "Touch her again, and we'll have words." Quinn's laugh carries an ugly edge. "Words? From the famous Cole Thatcher? I heard you'd gone soft, playing at being a rancher. Guess the stories were true." Cole doesn't respond to the provocation. Instead, he extends his hand toward Mabel. "Ma'am, are you all right?" For a moment she stares at his outstretched hand, as if it's something miraculous, something she'd stopped believing existed. Her voice, when it comes, is barely above a whisper. I'm fine." He didn't mean anything by it. The automatic defense of her abuser cuts Cole deeper than any insult Quinn might level. He's seen it before, the way victims protect their tormentors out of habit, fear, or misguided loyalty. But something about this woman, perhaps the intelligence in her eyes, or the way she instinctively protects her unborn child, tells him she's worth saving, even from herself. "No man has the right to strike a woman," Cole says, his eyes never leaving Quinn's face. Badge or no badge, Quinn's hand drops toward his gun, a movement so telegraphed that Cole almost feels insulted. "You threatening a lawman, Thatcher?" "I'm stating a fact." Cole's own hand hangs loose at his side, seemingly relaxed, but positioned perfectly for a lightning draw if necessary. "Now, step away from the lady." The tension in the alley ratchets higher, charged with the possibility of sudden violence. Mabel seems to sense it too, pressing herself harder against the wall, as if trying to disappear entirely. "She's my wife," Quinn snarls. "My property. I can do whatever I want with her." "No," Cole says quietly. "You can't." For a heartbeat, the world balances on a knife's edge. Quinn's eyes dart between Cole's face and his gun hand, calculating odds and consequences. Whatever he sees there makes him step back slightly, though his expression remains defiant. "This ain't over, Thatcher. You just made yourself an enemy of the law." Cole's smile carries no warmth. Wouldn't be the first time. Quinns. Retreat lacks dignity but serves its purpose. He backs toward the mouth of the alley, his hand still hovering near his weapon. Come on, Mabel. We're going home. No. The word slips out before Mabel seems to realize she's spoken it. Her hand flies to her mouth in horror at her own boldness. Quinns' face darkens further. What did you say? I said no. This time her voice carries more strength, though her body still trembles. I won't go with you anymore. The deputy takes a threatening step forward, but Cole moves to block his path. The message is clear, without words being spoken. This ain't over, Quinn repeats, but the venom in his voice can't disguise the uncertainty. He's facing a man whose reputation was built on violence, and for all his bluster, he's not ready for that kind of confrontation. After Quinn disappears around the corner, Cole turns to Mabel. Up close, he can see the extent of her condition, not just the pregnancy, but the accumulated damage of systematic abuse. Faded bruises on her arms, a careful way of moving that speaks of recent injuries, and eyes that have seen too much cruelty. Ma'am, I'm Cole Thatcher. You're safe now. She studies his face, as if trying to determine whether this is real or simply another variation of the nightmare her life has become. Mabel Quinn, though I suppose that might not be my name much longer. Do you have somewhere safe to go? The question seems to break something inside her. Tears spill down her cheeks as she shakes her head. No family, no friends, nobody who'd risk crossing Frank. Cole makes a decision that will change both their lives forever. Then you'll come with me. My ranch is safe, and you'll be protected there. You don't understand, she whispers. He'll come after you. He'll use his badge, call in favors. He won't let this stand. Let me worry about that. Cole offers his arm, which she takes with trembling fingers. Right now, let's get you away from here. As they walk toward the main street, Mabel's nursing bag clutched in her free hand, Cole understands that his 5 years of peaceful retirement have just come to an end. But looking at this brave woman who finally found the courage to say no to her tormentor, he discovers he doesn't regret the choice. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth protecting, and sometimes a man has to return to what he was in order to become what he's meant to be. The ride back to the ranch passes in tense silence, Mabel seated sideways on Thunder behind Cole, her arms wrapped around his waist for support. He can feel her trembling through his shirt, whether from fear, shock, or the jolting gait of the horse, he can't tell. Perhaps all three. Every few minutes, she glances back toward town, as if expecting to see Quinn and a posse in pursuit. Cole keeps Thunder to a steady pace, fast enough to put distance between them and Calico Junction, but not so fast as to jar Mabel's condition. The woman behind him is clearly in the later stages of pregnancy, and her earlier ordeal has left her physically and emotionally fragile. "How far along are you?" he asks over his shoulder, trying to keep his voice gentle. 7 months, maybe. 8. Her voice carries the uncertainty of a woman who's learned not to share too much, even innocent information. "It's hard to be sure. Frank didn't like me talking to doctors." The admission confirms Cole's growing understanding of the systematic control Quinn exercised over his wife. Isolation, intimidation, and violence, the tools of a man who confused power with strength. As they crest the ridge overlooking his ranch, Cole feels Mabel's grip tighten around his waist. The sprawling property spreads below them like a green oasis in the desert landscape, the main house and outbuildings arranged with the careful planning of a man who intended to stay. "It's beautiful," she whispers, and there's something like wonder in her voice, as if she'd forgotten that such peaceful places could exist. "It's home," Cole replies simply. Miguel and old Pete emerge from the barn as they approach, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern as they recognize the woman riding behind their boss. Both men have seen enough of the world to recognize the signs of systematic abuse, and their faces harden with understanding. Cole dismounts first, then carefully helps Mabel down. Her legs nearly buckle, and he steadies her with gentle hands. Miguel, have Rosa prepare the guest room. Pete, I need you to ride to town and keep an eye on things. If Deputy Quinn starts organizing a search party, I want to know about it. Old. Pete nods grimly. How long you figure before he comes calling? Not long. He's the type who can't let a challenge to his authority stand, especially a public one. Miguel's wife, Rosa, appears on the porch, drawn by the unusual activity. A sturdy woman in her 40s with kind eyes and capable hands, she takes one look at Mabel and immediately understands the situation. Without a word, she moves to Mabel's other side, offering support. Come, Mija, Rosa says softly. Let's get you inside and comfortable. As the women disappear into the house, Miguel steps closer to Cole, his expression troubled. Boss, harboring another man's wife, even a brute like Quinn. It's going to bring trouble, I know. Cole strips the saddle from Thunder, his movements automatic while his mind works through the implications. But I couldn't leave her there. I ain't saying you were wrong, Miguel clarifies quickly, just saying we need to be ready for what's coming. Inside the guest room, Rosa helps Mabel settle into a comfortable chair while she prepares the bed. The room is simple but clean, with a window overlooking the garden Rosa maintains behind the house. Mabel stares around the space as if trying to convince herself it's real. When did you last eat? Rosa asks, her maternal instincts taking over. Yesterday. Morning, I think. Mabel's hand moves protectively to her belly. Frank, he said I was getting too fat, eating too much. Rosa's jaw tightens, but she keeps her voice gentle. Well, you're going to eat now. Both of you need proper food. Mabel's wedding ring catches the afternoon light as she touches her face where Quinn struck her. The simple gold band represents everything she's trying to escape. Legal bondage disguised as holy matrimony, ownership masquerading as love. Mrs. Santos, I need you to understand something, Mabel says quietly. I was a nurse during the Indian Wars. I've seen men die from infected wounds, from fevers, from injuries that should have healed. I know about bringing life into this world, and about losing it. What I'm saying is, I'm not helpless. Rosa pauses in her work, studying the younger woman with new respect. What happened to bring you to Frank Quinn? Mabel's laugh carries no humor. Desperation and poor judgment in equal measure. After the wars ended, there weren't many opportunities for women like me. Frank seemed stable, a lawman with a steady income and a position in the community. I thought I was choosing security. Instead, you chose a prison where the jailer wore a badge and called it love. Mabel twists the wedding ring on her finger, but doesn't remove it. I keep thinking I should take this off, but I'm afraid of what that would mean. What it would make me. It would make you free, Rosa says firmly. That evening, Cole sits on his front porch, watching the sun set behind the distant mountains. The peaceful routine of ranch life continues around him. Cattle settling for the night, horses nickering. Softly in the corral, the familiar sounds of his chosen existence. But underneath the tranquility, tension hums like a taut wire. Mabel joins him on the porch, moving carefully but with more strength than she'd shown earlier. Rosa has fed her, helped her bathe, and provided clean clothes, simple ranch woman's. Attire that somehow makes her look younger, less burdened. Mr. Thatcher, I need to thank you for what you did today. Cole. And there's no need for thanks. There's every need. She settles into a chair beside him, her hands folded over her belly. Do you know what it's like to live in a world where nobody sees you being hurt? Where everybody knows but nobody cares enough to risk getting involved? Cole considers her. Question carefully. I know what it's like to be the one doing the hurting. Maybe that's why I couldn't walk away. The honesty surprises her. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A gunfighter. Someone hard and cold and violent. She studies his profile in the fading light. But you're not like that at all. I was once. Maybe I still am underneath all this. He gestures toward the peaceful ranch. That's what scares me. What scares me is that Frank won't let this stand. He'll come for me, and he'll bring men with him. I don't want your blood on my hands. That's my choice to make. Mabel slides the wedding ring from her finger, holding it up to catch the last rays of sunlight. I've been wearing this for 3 years. 3 years of telling myself that marriage meant enduring whatever he chose to do to me. That love meant accepting cruelty because the alternative was being alone. She lets the ring fall to the porch boards, where it rolls to a stop against Cole's boot. The sound it makes is tiny, insignificant, but somehow final. I'm not going back to him, she says quietly. Whatever that means, whatever the cost, I won't go back. Cole picks up the ring, studying the simple band that represented so much pain. You won't have to. I give you my word. Promises are easy to make, Mr. Cole. What happens when Frank arrives with a legal warrant? What happens when the territorial marshal sides with a fellow lawman against a notorious gunfighter harboring a runaway wife? Then we'll face that when it comes. As if summoned by their conversation, old Pete rides into the yard, his horse lathered with sweat. Cole rises immediately, recognizing the urgency in the old scout's posture. What did you learn? Pete dismounts stiffly, his weathered face grim. Quinn's already organizing a posse. Claims you kidnapped his wife at gunpoint. Got 3 men signed up already, with promises of more come morning. Mabel's face goes pale. He's twisting what happened. Course he is, Pete replies. Also sent a telegram to the territorial marshal in Santa Fe. Claims he needs official help bringing in a dangerous criminal. Cole absorbs this information calmly, though inside he feels the familiar stirring of old instincts. How long before they arrive? Hard to say. Marshal Thompson's a fair man, but he's also cautious. Probably send someone to investigate before committing troops. Pete looks between Cole and Mabel. We got maybe 3-4 days before this gets official. Then we use that time wisely. Cole's voice carries the quiet authority of a man accustomed to making life and death decisions. Miguel, I want the ranch prepared for siege conditions. Check all the weapons. Make sure we have adequate ammunition and supplies. As the men begin discussing defensive preparations, Mabel stares out at the darkening landscape. Somewhere beyond, those mountains, forces are gathering that will determine not just her fate, but the future of everyone on this ranch. For the first time in years, she's made a choice based on hope rather than fear. Whatever comes next, she won't face it as Deputy Quinn's property. She'll face it as Mabel Quinn, former battlefield nurse, survivor, and the woman brave enough to finally say no. Dawn brings no peace to the Thatcher Ranch. Cole stands in his study, holding the leather-wrapped bundle he hasn't touched in 3 years. Inside lies his Colt 45, cleaned and maintained despite his attempts to leave that life behind. The weight feels familiar in his hands, like greeting an old friend who knows too many of your secrets. Mabel appears in the doorway, moving more confidently after a night of genuine rest. Her color has improved, and there's a determined set to her shoulders that wasn't there yesterday. You're thinking about your past, she observes quietly. Hard not to, given the circumstances. Cole rewraps the pistol, but doesn't put it away. Once you strap on iron with the intention of using it, something changes inside you. I've been trying to change it back. Sometimes the past isn't something to escape from. Sometimes it's something to use. Mabel steps into the study, her eyes taking in the maps, property deeds, and business ledgers that represent Cole's legitimate enterprises. Tell me about your gunfighting days. Cole is quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth to share. I was good at killing people. Too good. Started when I was 16, defending my family's farm from raiders. By 20, I had a reputation. By 30, I had blood on my hands that would never wash clean. What changed? I got tired of being what other people needed me to be. The towns wanted a fast gun to solve their problems. The outlaws wanted a skilled partner for their schemes, but nobody ever asked what I wanted. His fingers traced the leather wrapping. I wanted to build something instead of tearing it down. Outside, Miguel calls to his sons as they reinforce the barn doors with additional planking. Rosa hangs laundry with determined normalcy, though Cole notices she keeps glancing toward the road. Everyone on the ranch understands they're preparing for war, but they go about it with the matter-of-fact competence of people who've faced hardship before. "I need to tell you something about Frank," Mabel says, settling into a chair across from Cole's desk. "He wasn't always like this. When I married him, he seemed genuinely protective, even gentle. It was only after we moved to Calico Junction that the drinking started, and with it, the violence. Power corrupts some men faster than others. There's more to it than that." Mabel's hands twist in her lap. "Frank was a cavalry soldier before he became a deputy. He served in the Indian campaigns, and I think something happened out there that broke something inside him." Cole studies her face carefully. "You were a battlefield nurse. Did you ever encounter him during the wars?" "Maybe. There were so many wounded, so many faces filled with pain and anger." She pauses, her expression troubled. "But lately, he's been having nightmares, talking in his sleep about things that happened during his army service. Terrible things." Before Cole can respond, the sound of approaching horses draws his attention to the window. A small group of riders appears on the horizon, kicking up dust as they approach the ranch. Cole counts 5 men, with Quinn's distinctive figure leading the group. "He's here," Mabel breathes, instinctively backing away from the window. Cole checks. His sidearm automatically, the motion so practiced it requires no conscious thought. "Stay inside. Whatever happens, don't come out until I call for you." He steps onto the front porch as the riders approach, Miguel and Old Pete flanking him with rifles held casually but ready. The message is clear. This is private property, and visitors are not welcome. Quinn reins in his horse 20 feet from the porch, his deputy's badge gleaming in the morning sun. The men with him are a mixed group, 2 ranch hands from neighboring spreads who likely joined for the promised pay, a drifter with the hard look of a man who hires his gun to the highest bidder, and surprisingly, Tom Bradley from the general store. "Morning, Thatcher," Quinn calls out, his voice carrying false authority. "I'm here on official business." "State your business and move on." Quinn produces a folded paper from his vest pocket, holding it up for all to see. "I got a warrant. Here for your arrest on charges of kidnapping. You took my wife against her will, and I'm here to bring her home." "That warrant worth the paper it's written on?" Cole asks calmly. "Judge Patterson signed it himself yesterday evening. Says here you used force and intimidation to coerce a lawman's wife into leaving her legal husband." Old Pete spits into the dust. "Funny how they can write up lies so official-like. You calling me a liar, old man?" The drifter's hand drops toward his gun, but freezes when Cole's grey eyes fix on him. "I'm calling you a fool if you think you're fast enough," Cole says quietly. The tension ratchets higher, but Quinn raises a hand to forestall his hired gun. "Now, Thatcher, there's no need for unpleasantness. Just send Mabel out, and we'll be on our way. No harm done." "Can't do that." "Why not?" "She's my legal wife. I got every right to take her home." Cole's voice remains level, but something dangerous enters his tone. "Because a man doesn't have the right to beat a pregnant woman, badge or no badge. What happens between a man and his wife is private business, not when it happens in public, not when decent people have to watch it." Quinn's face flushes red. "You got no right to interfere with legal matrimony. That woman belongs to me." "Nobody belongs to anybody, Quinn." The deputy's composure cracks slightly. "You think your reputation makes you untouchable? You think people have forgotten what you really are?" Cole descends the porch steps slowly, his movement causing the hired gunman to shift nervously in his saddle. "What am I, Quinn? A killer. A murderer who's been hiding behind respectability for 5 years. Maybe so." Cole's hand rests casually near his weapon. "But I never killed a woman, never raised my hand to someone who couldn't fight back. That makes me a better man than you, badge or no badge." Tom Bradley, who has remained silent until now, clears his throat uncomfortably. "Frank, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Tom." Quinn's authority is fraying, and he knows it. "Thatcher, I'm giving you one last chance. Send my wife out, or I'll take her by force. Try it." The words hang in the morning air like a physical challenge. Quinn's hired gun tenses, but something in Cole's stillness gives him pause. This is a man who has faced down dozens of armed opponents and lived to tell about it. His reputation wasn't built on luck or bluster, but on skill honed by years of life and death confrontations. From inside the house comes Mabel's voice, clear and carrying. "I'm not going with you, Frank. I'm not your property anymore." Quinn's face contorts with rage. "Get out here, Mabel. Get out here right now." "She made her choice," Cole says. "Respect it and ride away." "Like hell I will." Quinn's hand drops toward his gun but stops when he realizes Cole hasn't moved at all. The casual confidence is more unnerving than any dramatic gesture. "Frank," Tom Bradley says urgently, "this ain't worth dying over." The storekeeper's words seem to penetrate Quinn's rage, reminding him that he's facing a man whose skill with weapons is legendary throughout the territory. After a moment that stretches like eternity, Quinn straightens in his saddle. "This ain't over, Thatcher. I got the law on my side, and eventually that'll count for more than your reputation. Maybe, but today you're riding away empty-handed." Quinn jerks his horse around viciously, spurring the animal toward the road. His followers hesitate momentarily before joining the retreat, though the hired gunman keeps looking back as if calculating his chances. As the dust settles, Miguel lets out a long breath. "That went better than expected." "It's not over," Cole replies, watching the retreating figures. "That was just the opening move. Quinn's the type to escalate when he doesn't get his way." Old Pete nods grimly. "Man like that, being shown up in public, it'll eat at him, make him desperate." From the house comes the sound of a door opening, and Mabel appears on the porch. Her face is pale but determined, and she holds her nursing bag in one hand like a talisman. "Thank you," she says simply. Cole looks at the woman who has turned his peaceful world upside down and realizes he doesn't regret the choice he's made. Some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight destroys everything you've built. "We need to prepare for what comes next," he tells his men. "Quinn won't give up this easily." As they begin discussing defensive strategies, none of them notice the lone rider watching from a distant ridge, or the telegram that will be sent to Santa Fe within the hour. The forces gathering against them are larger and more dangerous than they realize, and time is running shorter than any of them know. 3 days pass in deceptive quiet. Cole establishes a routine of vigilance, posted guards, regular patrols of the property boundaries, and constant communication with old Pete, who makes daily trips to town to monitor Quinn's activities. But beneath the surface preparations, something deeper develops between Cole and Mabel. It begins with small conversations over evening meals, Rosa's cooking providing a backdrop for tentative exchanges about their respective pasts. Mabel speaks of her nursing days with a mixture of pride and haunted remembrance, describing field hospitals where she fought death with determination and primitive medical supplies. The worst part wasn't the blood or the screaming, she tells Cole as they sit on the porch after supper, watching the stars emerge in the clear desert sky. "It was the boys who asked me to write letters home. 17, 18 years old, dictating their last words to mothers who would never understand why their sons had to die in some godforsaken canyon fighting people they'd never met." Cole listens without judgment, recognizing the particular burden carried by those who've witnessed senseless violence up close. "How did you end up in the medical corps?" "My father was a doctor back in Ohio. He taught me everything he could before he died of consumption when I was 19. When the call came for battlefield nurses, it seemed like the right thing to do." She pauses, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "I thought I was saving lives. Sometimes I wonder if I was just prolonging suffering." "You gave men hope in their darkest moments. That matters, does it? When I think about all the boys who died despite everything I did for them." Her voice trails off, lost in memories that still have the power to wound. Cole understands her doubt intimately. "I spent years telling myself that the men I killed deserved it, that I was bringing justice to a lawless territory. But late at night, when sleep won't come, I remember their faces. Even the worst of them had mothers once. had hopes and dreams, before they chose the wrong path. This shared understanding of violence and its aftermath creates an unexpected bond between them. Neither tries to justify their past actions or seek absolution from the other. Instead, they simply acknowledge the weight they carry and find comfort in no longer bearing it alone. Mabel's worn Bible provides another bridge between them. Cole discovers her reading it by lamplight in the evening, her fingers tracing familiar passages with the reverence of someone seeking comfort rather than righteousness. "Do you believe in redemption?" she asks one evening, looking up from the Book of Psalms. "I want to," Cole admits. "Some days I think building this ranch, living peacefully, treating people with respect, maybe that balances the scales. Other days I wonder if some sins are too heavy to ever be lifted. The Bible says all sins can be forgiven. The Bible didn't see what I've done, what I've been." Mabel closes the book gently, her fingers still marking her place. "No, but it saw what King David did, what Saul became Paul, what the thief on the cross experienced in his final moments. Sometimes I think redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing something different for the future." Their conversations gradually reveal the systematic nature of Quinn's abuse. It started small: criticism of her cooking, complaints about household expenses, subtle isolation from potential friends. The physical violence came later, always followed by apologies and promises that it would never happen again. He convinced. It was my fault," Mabel explains during one of their talks, "that I was too sensitive, too demanding, too ungrateful for the security he provided. After a while, you start believing it. You start thinking that maybe you deserve whatever happens to you." Cole's jaw tightens at the clinical precision of the psychological manipulation. That's how men like Quinn maintain control. They don't just break your body, they break your spirit, make you complicit in your own suffering. "When did you realize what he was doing?" "The day I felt our baby move for the first time. I put my hand on my belly and felt this little life depending on me, and I suddenly understood that staying meant condemning an innocent child to grow up watching his mother being destroyed." Her voice strengthens with the memory. "That's when I knew I had to find a way out, no matter what it cost." Old Pete's daily reports from town paint an increasingly troubling picture. Quinn has been making the rounds, visiting neighboring ranches and businesses, spreading his version of events. According to the deputy, Cole Thatcher, notorious gunfighter and killer, has kidnapped a pregnant woman and is holding her against her will at his remote ranch. "He's getting some support," Pete reports during one evening briefing. "Fear mostly, but some genuine belief that you've gone back to your old ways. Quinn's smart enough to play on people's memories of who you used to be." "What about sympathetic voices? Few and far between. Doc Matthews spoke up for you, said you've been nothing but honorable in your dealings. Tom Bradley too, though he's catching heat for it. Most folks are keeping their heads down, waiting to see which way the wind blows." The isolation is strategic and effective. By positioning himself as legitimate law enforcement pursuing a dangerous criminal, Quinn is systematically cutting off Cole's potential sources of support. The irony isn't lost on Cole. His reputation as a reformed gunfighter, which should speak to his character, is being weaponized against him. Rosa provides another perspective during her conversations with Mabel. As the wife of a Mexican ranch, and in a territory where prejudice runs deep, she understands powerlessness and the importance of allies. "Men like your husband, they know how to use the law as a weapon," she tells Mabel while they work in the garden together. "They understand that badges and papers carry more weight than truth or justice." How do we fight something like that? With patience, Mija, and by being ready when the truth finally has its moment to speak. Mabel's pregnancy continues to progress, and Cole finds himself increasingly protective of both mother and unborn child. He catches himself listening for her movements in the house, checking on her more frequently than necessary, and feeling a fierce, territorial instinct whenever Quinn's name is mentioned. The realization troubles him. 5 years of careful emotional distance, of keeping people at arm's length to avoid the pain of inevitable loss, crumbles in the face of Mabel's quiet courage and growing trust. He's falling in love with a pregnant woman married to a man who wants to destroy him, and the complications of that situation extend far beyond the immediate physical danger. During one of their evening conversations, Mabel seems to sense his internal struggle. "You're worried about getting too attached," she observes. "Smart woman. What scares you more, that something might happen to me, or that you might have to become violent again to protect me?" Cole considers the question carefully. "Both, but mostly I'm scared that caring about you is going to get you killed." "Would it change anything if I told you I was scared of the same thing? That I'm terrified of caring about someone again, of trusting someone with my heart after Frank taught me what men can do with that kind of power? Probably not." "Good, because I think we're past the point of being sensible about this." That night, as Cole makes his final security rounds, he finds Mabel standing at her bedroom window, looking out at the star-filled sky. Something about her posture, protective, determined, but also achingly vulnerable, stops him in the hallway. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new threats from Quinn and his growing coalition of supporters. But tonight, for the first time in years, Cole allows himself to hope that the future might hold something more than mere survival. The woman in the next room represents everything he'd thought was lost to him. Family, purpose, a reason to fight for something more than just his own continued existence. Outside, the desert wind carries the faint sound of distant riders, and Cole's hand automatically moves to his gun. The peaceful interlude is ending, and soon they'll all discover whether love and determination can triumph over corruption and official power. The morning brings devastating news. Old Pete rides into the ranch yard at full gallop, his weathered face grim with urgency. In his hand, he clutches a wanted poster that makes Cole's blood run cold. "They're everywhere," Pete announces, dismounting stiffly. "Every telegraph pole, every store window, every public building from here to Santa Fe." Cole takes the poster, studying the crude but recognizable sketch of his face. The words beneath chill him. "Wanted, Cole Thatcher, for kidnapping and unlawful detention. Armed and extremely dangerous. 500 reward. Contact Deputy Frank Quinn, Calico Junction." Mabel appears on the porch, drawn by the commotion. When she sees the poster, her face goes pale. $500. That's more money than most men see in 2 years. "Quinn's not taking any chances," Pete observes. "Also heard tell he's been sending telegrams all over the territory, calling in favors from his army days. Could be looking at more than just local law enforcement soon." Cole studies the poster more carefully. The details are precisely crafted to paint him as a dangerous criminal who's reverted to his violent past. No mention of Quinn's abuse, no acknowledgement that Mabel left willingly. Just the stark narrative of a notorious gunfighter kidnapping a pregnant woman. "There's more," Pete continues reluctantly. "Doc Matthews tried to speak up for you yesterday at the town meeting. Quinn shut him down, claimed the doc was too old to see what was really happening. Then this morning, somebody threw a rock through the doc's window with a note telling him to mind his own business. The systematic intimidation is working exactly as Quinn intended. Cole's potential allies are being silenced through fear, while the reward money draws every bounty hunter and desperate man within 100 miles. Inside the house, Cole spreads maps across his desk, while Mabel watches. The ranch's isolation, once a blessing, now feels like a trap. Limited escape routes, predictable water sources, and terrain that favors attackers with superior numbers. "We could run," Mabel suggests quietly. "Take what we can carry and head for Mexico. Start over where nobody knows our names." Cole considers the option seriously. It would be the practical choice. Abandon everything he's built and disappear into the vast wilderness beyond the border. But something inside him rebels against the idea. Running means Quinn wins. It means every other man like him learns that badges and false warrants can be used to terrorize innocent people. His finger traces possible defensive positions on the map. Sometimes a man has to make a stand, even when the odds are against him, even when that stand might cost him everything. Especially then, that afternoon brings unexpected visitors. Tom Bradley arrives with his wagon, but instead of supplies, he carries disturbing news from town. Quinn's gone completely mad, the storekeeper reports, accepting Rosa's offer of coffee with grateful hands. Had 3 men arrested yesterday on charges of conspiracy to harbor a fugitive, just for saying they didn't believe his story about you kidnapping Mabel. Who were they? Cole asks. Bill Henderson from the hotel, young Jimmy Martinez who works at the livery, and Jake Sullivan from the Silver Dollar Saloon. None of them did anything except express doubts about Quinn's version of events. The message is clear. Dissent will not be tolerated. Quinn is using his badge to create a climate of fear that prevents anyone from questioning his authority or supporting Cole. There's something else, Bradley continues, his voice dropping. Quinn's been drinking heavily, and when he drinks, he talks. Last night he was going on about his army days, about things that happened during the Indian campaigns, dark things. Mabel, he mentioned your name specifically, said you might remember him from the field hospitals. Mabel's face grows troubled. I treated hundreds of wounded soldiers. If Frank was among them, I don't remember the circumstances. According to Quinn's drunken ramblings, you treated him after some kind of massacre. He kept saying you knew his secrets, that you could destroy him if you remembered. A chill runs down Cole's spine as pieces begin falling into place. Quinn's desperation might stem from more than just wounded pride or lost property. If Mabel witnessed something during her nursing days that could expose Quinn as a war criminal, his pursuit takes on a different, more dangerous dimension. That evening, Cole and Mabel sit in his study, going through her carefully preserved nursing records. The leather-bound journal contains detailed notes about patients, treatments, and circumstances surrounding various cases. I documented everything I could, Mabel explains, turning pages filled with precise handwriting. Medical conditions, but also what the men told me about their battles, their wounds, their fears. Sometimes talking was the only medicine I could provide. They find the entry dated 3 years earlier. Corporal Franklin Quinn, gunshot wound to left shoulder, claims injury occurred during pacification of Pueblo Village. Patient exhibited signs of severe psychological distress, repeatedly mentioning civilian casualties, spoke of necessary actions and following orders, but details suggest possible war crimes. Patient discharged against medical advice. Cole reads the entry twice, understanding its implications. This is what he's really afraid of, not losing you, losing his secret. If this information reached the right authorities, it could expose him as a participant in unlawful killings. Mabel's voice is quiet but steady. No wonder he's been so desperate to silence me. The question is, what do we do with this information? Before Mabel can answer, Miguel bursts into the study without knocking, a breach of protocol that signals extreme urgency. Boss, we got riders coming, a lot of them. Cole moves to the window, counting the approaching figures in the fading light. 8 men, possibly more, riding hard toward the ranch. Some wear badges that glint in the sunset, while others have the rough appearance of hired guns drawn by the reward money. It's starting, Cole says quietly. He turns to Mabel, seeing determination, mixed with fear in her green eyes. Are you ready for this? I've been ready since the day I decided to stop being a victim. She clutches her nursing journal to her chest. This information doesn't just threaten Quinn. It could clear your name and expose him as the real criminal. Getting it to the right people won't be easy. Quinn's made sure we're isolated from any sympathetic authorities. The sound of horses grows closer, and Cole can make out Quinn's voice calling demands across the desert air. Whatever happens in the next few hours will determine whether justice prevails or whether corruption triumphs through superior force. Cole checks his weapons one final time. the familiar weight of the Colt bringing back muscle memories from his gunfighting days. Beside him, Mabel stands straight and unafraid, transformed from victim to fighter by the power of truth and righteous anger. "Miguel, get Rosa and the others into the root cellar," Cole orders. "Pete, take position in the barn loft with the rifle. And Mabel, I'm staying with you," she interrupts firmly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Outside, Quinn's voice carries clearly in the still evening air. "Thatcher! Send out my wife and surrender yourself, or we'll take this ranch apart board by board." Cole's response is equally clear. "Come and try." The siege of Thatcher Ranch is about to begin, and with it, the final test of whether love and justice can yield triumph over corruption and violence. In Mabel's journal lies the key to exposing Quinn's crimes, but first they must survive long enough to use it. As the first shots ring out across the desert, Cole realizes that sometimes the price of justice is measured not in gold or silver, but in blood and courage. Tonight will determine which side pays that price. The standoff stretches through the long desert night, neither side willing to make the first decisive move. Quinn's men have positioned themselves around the ranch perimeter, close enough to prevent escape, but far enough to avoid accurate rifle fire in the darkness. Cole and his defenders maintain their positions in the house and barn, waiting for dawn to reveal their enemies' true numbers and intentions. As the first pale light touches the eastern mountains, a lone rider approaches. Under a white flag, Cole recognizes him as Sheriff Morrison from the county seat, an honest lawman whose jurisdiction technically supersedes Quinn's authority as a deputy. "Thatcher!" Morrison calls out. "I need to talk to you." Cole emerges onto the porch, hands visible but ready. Morrison is a man he respects, someone who's built a reputation on fairness rather than fear. "Morning, Sheriff. Didn't expect to see you mixed up in Quinn's business. Got a telegram yesterday requesting assistance with a dangerous fugitive." Morrison's weathered face shows skepticism. "Funny thing is, the more I learned about this situation, the less it made sense." "How so?" "Well, for starters, I did some checking on Deputy Quinn's background. Seems there are some questions about his army service that nobody wants to answer directly." Quinn spurs his horse forward, his face flushed with anger. "Sheriff, this man is a kidnapper and a killer. He's holding my pregnant wife against her." "Will, that's one version of events," Morrison replies calmly. "I'd like to hear another version before I decide how to proceed." From the porch, Mabel's voice carries clearly. "Sheriff Morrison, I'm here voluntarily. My husband has been beating me for months, and Mr. Thatcher saved my life." Quinn's composure cracks visibly. "She's been coerced, threatened. You can't believe anything she says." Morrison studies Quinn with the calculating gaze of a man who's learned to read guilt in a suspect's eyes. "Deputy, I'm going to need to see some official documentation about this warrant you claim to have." "I told you." Judge Patterson signed. "It himself. Funny thing about that, I stopped by Judge Patterson's office on my way here. He says he never issued any warrant concerning Cole Thatcher. In fact, he seemed quite concerned that someone was forging legal documents using his name. The revelation hits Quinn like a physical blow. His carefully constructed legal facade crumbles in an instant, exposing the desperation beneath. Several of his hired guns exchange uncertain glances, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of attacking a ranch on behalf of someone operating outside the law. But Morrison isn't finished. He produces a telegram from his vest pocket, unfolding it with deliberate precision. "This came through yesterday evening from the military command in Santa Fe. Seems they've been looking for someone matching your description. Deputy Quinn, someone who deserted his unit after participating in an unauthorized attack on a peaceful Pueblo village 3 years ago." Quinn's face goes white. "That's a lie. I served honorably and was discharged with full honors." According to this, Corporal Franklin Quinn disappeared the night before he was scheduled to testify at a military tribunal investigating war crimes. The Army's been looking for him ever since. Cole feels the pieces clicking into place. Quinn, isn't just an abusive husband trying to reclaim his property. He's a deserter and war criminal hiding behind a stolen identity. The deputy's badge, his position in Calico Junction, his entire life has been built on a foundation of lies. "Sheriff," Mabel calls out, "I have documentation that might interest you. Medical records from my time as a battlefield nurse." She appears on the porch, holding her nursing journal, the leather-bound book that contains 3 years of careful observations and patient records. Quinn's eyes fix on the journal with something approaching terror. "That's private property," he shouts. "Medical records are confidential." "Not when they document war crimes," Morrison replies grimly. "Mrs. Quinn, I'd like to examine those records, if you're willing." As Mabel begins to descend the porch steps, Quinn makes a desperate decision. His hand drops to his gun, but instead of drawing on Morrison or Cole, he aims at Mabel. "Nobody's looking at those records. I won't let you destroy me with lies and half-remembered stories." The threat against a pregnant woman galvanizes everyone present. Even Quinn's hired guns seem shocked by his willingness to shoot an unarmed-ish woman. Several of them begin backing their horses away, clearly wanting no part of what's about to unfold. Cole's response is instantaneous. Years of training and experience compress into a single fluid motion as he draws and fires, his bullet striking Quinn's gun hand and sending the weapon spinning into the dust. Quinn screams and clutches his wounded hand, his carefully maintained facade finally collapsing completely. "You're all against me," he rages, blood streaming between his fingers. "She's lying. They're all lying. I was following orders. We had to protect ourselves." Morrison dismounts and walks toward Quinn, his own weapon drawn but pointed safely toward E. "The ground. Franklin Quinn, you're under arrest for desertion, impersonating a law enforcement officer, and suspicion of war crimes. You have the right to remain silent, though it seems you've already said plenty." The remaining hired guns disperse quickly, unwilling to risk their lives for a man who's been exposed as a fraud. The local men who joined Quinn's posse seem stunned by the revelations, clearly struggling to process how completely they'd been deceived. As Morrison places Quinn under arrest, Mabel approaches with her journal open to the crucial entry. Her voice is steady as she reads, "Patient exhibited signs of severe psychological distress, repeatedly mentioning civilian casualties, including women and children. Spoke of necessary actions and following orders, but details suggest participation in unlawful killings. Patient became agitated when asked about specific circumstances of his wounds, changing his story multiple times. That's enough evidence to hold him while the Army conducts a proper investigation," Morrison declares. "Mrs. Quinn, would you be willing to testify about these observations?" "I'll testify to everything I witnessed, both during the war and during my marriage." Quinn's arrest transforms the entire situation. No longer is Cole a notorious gunfighter harboring a kidnapped woman. He's a citizen who protected an abuse victim from a violent criminal masquerading as a lawman. The wanted posters become meaningless. The threats of legal action evaporate, and the siege of Thatcher Ranch ends not with violence, but with justice. As Sheriff Morrison prepares to transport Quinn to the county jail, the defeated man makes one final attempt to salvage something from his collapsed world. "Mabel," he calls out desperately, "you can't do this to me. We're married. That has to count for something." Mabel looks at the man who terrorized her for 3 years, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "Our marriage was based on lies, Frank. You're not the man you claimed to be, and I'm not the woman who was too afraid to fight back." She removes her wedding ring, the one she'd dropped on Cole's porch days earlier, and hands it to Morrison. "I believe this belongs to evidence now. I want nothing more to do with Franklin Quinn, or anything connected to him." As the dust settles, and Quinn's men disappear into the desert, Cole realizes that the truth has indeed set them free. The military dispatch that exposed Quinn's real identity has transformed everything, turning the hunted into the hunters and the criminals into the victims. But more than that, it has given Cole and Mabel something precious, a future built on truth, rather than hidden from lies. The woman standing beside him is no longer a runaway wife, hiding from an abusive husband. She's a courageous witness to justice, who chose love over fear. Sheriff Morrison tips his hat as he prepares to leave with his prisoner. Mr. Thatcher, Mrs. Quinn, I apologize for the trouble this has caused you. Sometimes the law moves slowly, but it does eventually find its way to the truth. As the law enforcement contingent disappears toward town, Cole and Mabel stand together on the porch of the ranch, watching the sun climb higher into a sky that suddenly seems full of possibilities rather than threats. The siege is over, but their real life together is just beginning. The relief of Quinn's arrest proves short-lived. 3 days after Sheriff Morrison takes the disgraced deputy into custody, old Pete returns from town with disturbing news that casts a shadow over their hard-won victory. Quinn's escaped, Pete announces without preamble, his weathered face grim. Broke out of the county jail sometime before dawn, killed Deputy Williams in the process. Cole feels ice form in his stomach. A desperate Quinn was dangerous enough when he had the law's protection. A cornered Quinn with nothing left to lose represents a threat beyond anything they've faced so far. How? Mabel asks, her voice steady despite the obvious fear in her eyes. Had help on the outside. 2 men, possibly 3, rushed the jail around midnight. Professional job. They knew exactly where to strike and how to get him out clean. Pete accepts Rosa's offer of coffee with hands that tremble slightly from exhaustion. Sheriff Morrison's organizing a manhunt, but Quinn had a 6-hour head start and knows this territory better than most. Cole studies the maps spread across his desk, calculating possible escape routes and hiding places. He's not running. A man like Quinn, with his reputation destroyed and his crimes exposed, has nothing left except revenge. Agreed. Pete nods. Word is he's been making contact with some of his old army associates, men who served with him during the Indian campaigns. If even half the stories about that unit are true, we're dealing with more than just hired guns. The implications settle over them like a funeral shroud. Quinn's escape transforms their situation from resolved to catastrophically dangerous. A man facing life imprisonment or execution has every incentive to eliminate the witnesses who exposed him, regardless of the cost. Mabel places her hand protectively over her swollen belly, the baby's movements visible even through her dress. At 8 months pregnant, she represents both the most precious thing Cole needs to protect and the most vulnerable target Quinn could choose. We need to get word to the military authorities, Cole decides. If Quinn's gathering his old unit, we're looking at men trained in warfare, not just gunfighting. Already tried, Pete replies. Telegraph lines have been cut between here and Santa Fe. Professional job, too, not just random vandalism. Somebody knew exactly which lines to sever to isolate us. The systematic nature of the attack plan becomes clear. Quinn isn't acting on impulse or emotion. He's implementing a carefully considered strategy to trap them while eliminating outside interference. The ranch that once represented sanctuary now feels like a carefully prepared killing ground. Miguel appears in the doorway, his usually calm demeanor replaced by urgent concern. Boss Rosa says Mrs. Quinn's having pains. Started about an hour ago and getting stronger. Cole's blood chills. Of all the possible complications, premature labor represents the worst timing imaginable. Mabel needs medical attention, but the nearest doctor is in town. Territory now controlled by Quinn and his allies. In the guest room, they find Mabel braced against the windowsill, breathing through a contraction with the controlled technique of someone who understands what's happening to her body. Rosa hovers nearby, her maternal instincts warring with recognition that this situation requires more medical knowledge than she possesses. How far apart are the pains? Cole asks, forcing his voice to remain calm. About 15 minutes, Mabel replies through gritted teeth, but they're getting stronger. This baby's decided it's time to be born. Can you delay it? Do something to slow the process? Mabel's laugh carries no humor. Babies come when they're ready, Cole. All we can do is prepare for the delivery and hope we have enough time. The terrible irony isn't lost on any of them. After surviving Quinn's abuse, false accusations, and a siege of the ranch, Mabel must now face childbirth without proper medical support, while her escaped husband gathers killers for a final assault. Old. Pete posts himself at the window, rifle ready, scanning the horizon for signs of approaching riders. How long do we have? With a first baby, labor can last anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, Mabel explains, her nurse's training allowing her to assess her own condition with clinical detachment. But stress can accelerate the process. If Quinn attacks while I'm in active labor, she doesn't need to finish the sentence. They all understand that a woman in childbirth cannot be moved, cannot defend herself, and requires absolute protection when she's most vulnerable. Cole makes rapid decisions, drawing on tactical knowledge he'd hoped never to use again. Miguel, I want you and your sons to take Rosa and head for the Miller Ranch. Get as far from here as possible. With respect, boss. We're not leaving you to face this alone. This isn't your fight. Miguel's expression hardens with stubborn dignity. You gave my family work when nobody else would hire Mexicans. You treated us with respect when others saw us as cheap labor. This is our home too, and we'll defend it. Pete nods agreement. Same goes for me. Been riding with you for 5 years now. Not about to abandon you when things get interesting. Their loyalty touches Cole deeply, but also increases his sense of responsibility. Now he must protect not just Mabel and her unborn child, but also the people who've chosen to stand with him against overwhelming odds. As if summoned by their conversation, the distant sound of horses reaches them through the open window. Pete raises his field glasses, studying the approaching riders with the practiced eye of a former cavalry scout. 8 men, maybe 9. Still too far to make out faces, but they're riding hard and direct. No attempt at concealment. Cole joins him at the window, his own military experience helping him assess the threat. Formation suggests experienced fighters. They're confident enough to approach openly, which means they're either very good or they have information we don't. Another contraction grips Mabel, stronger than the previous ones. She grips the bedpost, her knuckles white with effort, and Cole realizes they're rapidly running out of time. The baby's arrival will coincide almost exactly with Quinn's assault, a timing so cruel it seems engineered by malevolent fate. Rosa, I need you to help me prepare for delivery, Mabel says, her voice strained but determined. Clean linens, hot water, and that bottle of whiskey Cole keeps in his desk for sterilization. Mabel, maybe we should... There's no maybe about this, Cole. This baby is coming whether we're ready or not. The question is whether we can keep all of us alive long enough for me to bring new life into this world. The approaching riders resolve into distinct figures as they draw closer. Through the field glasses, Cole recognizes Quinn's distinctive silhouette, but the men with him are strangers, hard-faced veterans with the bearing of professional soldiers turned killers. Military formation, Pete observes grimly. These aren't ranch hands or drifters. Quinn's called in his old unit. Cole checks his weapons automatically, the familiar ritual providing small comfort in the face of overwhelming odds. 8 against 3, with a woman in labor to protect. By any rational calculation, their chances of survival approach 0. But as he looks at Mabel, breathing through another contraction with gritted determination, Cole realizes that rational calculations don't account for the power of love and the human capacity for courage in impossible circumstances. How long until they reach us? He asks Pete. 20 minutes, maybe less. Cole turns to address his small band of defenders. Listen, carefully. We're not trying to win a battle here. We're trying to buy time. Every minute we can hold them off brings us closer to help arriving and gives Mabel a better chance of delivering safely. What about when the army patrol shows up? Miguel asks. Sheriff Morrison promised to send word to Santa Fe about Quinn's escape. Military response should arrive sometime tomorrow, but we can't count on it. Another contraction, stronger and longer than the previous ones. Mabel's face goes pale with effort, and Rosa immediately moves to support her. "Cole," Mabel calls softly, "I need you to promise me something. Anything. If it comes down to a choice between saving me and saving the baby, it won't come to that. Promise me you'll choose the baby. This child didn't ask to be born into this situation. Give him a chance at the life I might not get to see." Cole takes her hand, feeling the strength in her grip despite her condition. "I promise we'll all survive this. You, me, and the baby." Outside, the sound of approaching horses grows louder. Quinn's voice carries across the desert air, no longer maintaining any pretense of legal authority. "Thatcher, I'm giving you one. Chance to send out my wife, otherwise we're coming and shooting." Cole's response echoes from the ranch house. "Come ahead. We'll be waiting." As the final confrontation begins, 3 lives hang in the balance, Cole's, Mabel's, and that of the child, fighting to be born into a world where love and courage represent the only weapons against hatred and revenge. In the next few hours, they'll discover whether justice can triumph when the law itself has failed, and whether new life can emerge from the shadow of death. The first shot shatters the morning stillness, splintering wood from the porch railing inches from Cole's head. Quinn's voice carries across the yard, distorted by rage and desperation. "You should have minded your own business, Thatcher. Now, you're all going to pay." Cole returns fire from behind the stone foundation of the porch, his bullet striking sparks from the water trough where one of Quinn's men has taken cover. The answering volley forces him to duck as lead whistles overhead, shattering windows and gouging chunks from the ranch house walls. From the barn, old Pete's rifle speaks with measured authority, the heavy crack of the Winchester followed by a scream of pain from one of the attackers. Miguel fires from the kitchen window, his shots carefully aimed to conserve ammunition while keeping the enemy pinned down. Inside the house, Rosa helps Mabel through another contraction, the woman's muffled cries barely audible above the gunfire. The baby's timing couldn't be worse, active labor beginning just as Quinn's assault reaches its peak. "How much longer?" Cole calls out during a brief lull in the shooting. "Hours yet," Rosa replies, her voice tight with worry. "First babies take their time, but the stress is making everything happen faster." A new sound cuts through the battle, the splintering crash of an axe against wood. 2 of Quinn's men are attacking the back door while the others maintain covering fire from the front. Cole realizes they're trying to force entry from multiple directions, using classic military tactics to overwhelm the defenders. "Miguel, watch. The rear entrance!" Cole sprints through the house, reaching the kitchen just as the back door gives way. A bearded man in cavalry surplus clothing charges through the opening, pistol raised, but Miguel's shotgun blast catches him center mass and flings him back into the yard. Through the shattered doorway, Cole sees another attacker rushing forward. His Colt speaks twice, both bullets finding their mark, and the man crumples beside his fallen companion. But the distraction allows Quinn's remaining men to advance on the front of the house. Glass explodes inward as they shoot out the remaining windows, preparing to storm the building. From the guest room comes a cry that cuts through Cole's heart, Mabel calling his name in pain and fear. He's torn between defending the house and protecting the woman he loves as she fights to bring their child into this violent world. Old Pete's rifle fire from the barn becomes more sporadic, suggesting he's either wounded or running low on ammunition. The tactical situation deteriorates rapidly as Quinn's men close the distance, their superior numbers beginning to tell. A shadow appears at the front window, and Cole fires instinctively. The man staggers, but doesn't fall, raising his own weapon with grim determination. Cole's second shot takes him down permanently, but not before the attacker's bullet punches through the wall near Mabel's room. "Rosa, get her away from the exterior." Walls. Moving Mabel during active labor risks complications, but staying near the windows guarantees death if a stray bullet finds its mark. Between contractions, they help her to the interior hallway, the safest spot in the house. Quinn's voice cuts through the gunfire. "Burn them out! Fire the barn first, then the house." The smell of smoke reaches Cole's nostrils, confirming his worst fears. If they can't defend the buildings, they'll be forced into the open, where Quinn's superior numbers guarantee slaughter. From the barn comes the sound of old Pete's rifle. Faster now, more desperate. The old scout is fighting for his life as flames begin to lick at the wooden walls around him. Cole makes a crucial decision. "Miguel, take my rifle and hold the house. I'm going for Pete." "Boss, that's suicide. There's too many of them." "Pete won't abandon that barn until it falls down around him. I'm not leaving him to burn." Cole checks his ammunition. 4 bullets remaining in the Colt, plus a handful of cartridges in his pocket. Not much for what he has to do, but it will have to be enough. He bursts from the front door at a dead run, firing as he moves. His first shot drops one of the men trying to torch the barn. The second forces another to dive for cover. Zigzagging across the open ground, he relies on speed and surprise to reach Pete's position. A bullet tugs at his shirt sleeve. Another kicks up dust at his feet, but he reaches the barn alive. Inside, smoke fills the air, and flames climb the walls. Pete crouches behind a hay bale, blood streaming from a scalp wound, but still firing steadily. "About time you showed up," the old scout grins. "Was starting to think you decided to let me have all the fun. Can you move?" "Can and will. This place is about to become a bonfire." Together they fight their way toward the barn's rear entrance, Pete's rifle and Cole's pistol clearing a path through the smoke and flames. Behind them, the barn groans and sways as fire weakens its supporting timbers. They emerge into daylight just as a cry from the house pierces the air. Not Mabel's voice this time, but something entirely new. The thin, outraged wail of a newborn, taking its first breath. In the midst of battle, with smoke and gunfire all around them, new life has entered the world. Cole's son has been born into violence, but he's alive and making his presence known with healthy lungs. The baby's cry galvanizes Cole with fierce protective instinct. His son, has entered a world under siege, and every second of delay increases the danger to both mother and child. The tactical situation demands immediate action. "Pete, can you make it back to the house?" "I'll crawl if I have to." The old scout wipes blood from his eyes, his rifle ready despite his wound. They sprint across the open ground as the barn collapses behind them in a shower of sparks and flaming timber. Quinn's remaining men, Cole counts 4 still active, have taken positions around the house, but the baby's arrival seems to have given them pause. Quinn himself emerges from behind the water trough, his face a mask of rage and desperation. In his unwounded hand, he grips a pistol aimed not at Cole, but toward the house, where his newborn child cries. "That baby should have been mine," Quinn screams. "Everything you've stolen from me, my wife, my life, my future, it all dies here." The threat against his son unleashes something primal in Cole. Years of careful control, of choosing peace over violence, evaporate in an instant. This isn't about justice or law anymore. It's about protecting his family from a madman who would murder an infant to satisfy his twisted need for revenge. Cole's remaining bullets find their targets with lethal precision. 2 of Quinn's men fall before they can react, cut down by the cold efficiency that once made Cole Thatcher a legend throughout the territory. But Quinn uses the distraction to reach the house's front porch, his gun trained on the door behind, which Mabel and their newborn son lie vulnerable. "Come out here, Mabel! Bring that bastard child with you! Stay inside!" Cole shouts, reloading with hands that move faster than conscious thought. Pete flanks to the right, his rifle seeking targets. Among the remaining attackers, Miguel's shotgun booms from the kitchen window, forcing one of Quinn's men to abandon his position. The crossfire pins Quinn on the porch, but he's close enough to the door that a desperate rush could reach Mabel before anyone can stop him. Cole recognizes the tactical stalemate Any move he makes might trigger Quinn to storm inside. Then Rosa appears in the doorway, cradling a small bundle wrapped in clean linens. The baby's cries have subsided to quiet mewling sounds, and even from a distance, Cole can see the tiny fists waving in the morning air. "Frank Quinn," Rosa calls out, her voice carrying the authority of a woman who's raised 6 children of her own. "Look at this child. Look at what you're threatening to destroy." Quinn's gun wavers, his attention drawn despite himself to the infant. "That's my baby, my son. This baby belongs to no one but himself," Rosa replies firmly. "He's innocent of everything that's happened between you and his mother. Would you really murder an innocent child?" For a moment, something human flickers in Quinn's eyes. The sight of the newborn seems to penetrate his rage, reminding him of whatever decency once existed in his character. But the moment passes. "If I can't have them, nobody can." Quinn turns toward Rosa and the baby, but Cole is already moving. The silver cross his father gave him, worn on a chain around his neck for 30 years, catches the sunlight as he launches himself up the porch steps. His tackle carries both men off the porch and into the yard, Quinn's shot going wild as they crash to the ground. They roll in the dust, fighting for control of the gun, each man knowing that survival depends on eliminating the other. Quinn is younger and fresher, but Cole fights with the desperate strength of a father protecting his child. They struggle for the weapon, Quinn's wounded hand hampering his grip, while Cole's years of hard ranch work give him the advantage in close combat. The gun goes off between them, the muzzle flash burning Cole's shirt. For a heartbeat, neither man knows who's been hit. Then Quinn's eyes widen with shock and pain, his strength flowing away as blood spreads across his chest. Should have been mine," Quinn whispers, his voice growing weak. Cole looks down at the dying man, feeling no satisfaction in the victory. Quinn chose this path, chose violence over acceptance, chose revenge over redemption. But there's no joy in watching any man's life ebb away in the dust. "It didn't have to end this way," Cole says quietly. Quinn's laugh is bitter and brief. "Yes, it did. Some of us are too broken to be fixed." With those words, Frank Quinn, deserter, war criminal and wife-beater, dies in the yard of the ranch he tried to destroy, his dreams of reclaiming what was never truly his dying with him. The surviving members of his band, seeing their leader fall, throw down their weapons and raise their hands in surrender. The battle for Thatcher Ranch is over, won not by superior firepower, but by the power of love defending itself against hatred. Cole rises slowly, dust and blood on his clothes, his father's cross gleaming against his chest. Behind him, Rosa still holds his son, alive, healthy, and ready to begin life in a world where justice has finally prevailed. 6 months later, the rebuilt barn stands strong against the autumn sky, its new timber gleaming golden in the late afternoon sun. Cole pauses in his work, hammer in hand, to watch Mabel hanging laundry in the yard. Their son, Thomas Cole Thatcher, sleeps peacefully in a basket at her feet, his dark hair catching the light as a gentle breeze stirs the cottonwood leaves overhead. The trial of Quinn's surviving men concluded 3 weeks ago in Santa Fe, with Mabel's testimony providing crucial evidence that led to convictions for conspiracy and assault. The military tribunal investigating the Pueblo Village massacre reached similar conclusions, officially declaring Frank Quinn a deserter and war criminal posthumously. Justice, though delayed, finally found its mark. Sheriff Morrison rides into the yard, his weekly visit now more social call than official business. The lawman has become a frequent guest at Sunday dinners, drawn by Rosa's cooking and the peaceful atmosphere of a ranch where justice and mercy have learned to coexist. "Afternoon, Cole. How's the family?" Growing stronger every day, Cole sets down his hammer and walks over to where Morrison is dismounting. "Mabel's talking about starting a small clinic here on the ranch. Nothing fancy, just basic medical care for folks who can't make it to town easily. Territory could use more medical services." especially with someone of her experience and character. They join Mabel in the yard, where little Thomas has awakened and begun making the demanding sounds that indicate feeding time. Mabel lifts him with the confident ease of a mother who's quickly mastered the rhythms of infant care. "Sheriff Morrison, perfect timing as always." She greets him with a warm smile. "Rosa's making her famous apple pie for dessert. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom." As they walk toward the house, Cole reflects on the changes 6 months have brought. The physical rebuilding was the easy part. New barn, repaired windows, replaced furniture. The emotional rebuilding took longer, required more patience and faith. Mabel faced the challenges of new motherhood while processing the trauma of her marriage and its violent end. Some nights she woke from nightmares about Quinn's final assault. But each morning brought renewed strength, helped by the daily evidence that she'd chosen correctly in trusting Cole with her life and future. For Cole, fatherhood arrived like a revelation, holding his son for the first time, this tiny, perfect human being who depended entirely on him for protection and guidance, transformed his understanding of what mattered most in life. The ranch, his reputation, even his own survival meant nothing compared to ensuring Thomas grew up safe and loved. Their wedding ceremony 3 months earlier was simple but meaningful, conducted by a traveling preacher in the ranch house parlor with Miguel, Rosa, and old Pete serving as witnesses. Mabel wore a simple blue dress that Rosa had sewn, and Cole managed to find a suit that fit reasonably well, despite his rancher's build. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do." "Do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do." The rings they exchanged were simple gold bands purchased from the jeweler in Santa Fe. Nothing fancy, but symbols of a commitment built on truth rather than fear, love rather than possession. Now, watching Mabel nurse their son while discussing clinic plans with Sheriff Morrison, Cole marvels at the domestic peace they've created. The violence that brought them together feels like something from another lifetime, though he knows its lessons remain important. Old Pete emerges from the horse barn, moving more slowly than before, but with the same keen awareness that kept him alive through decades of frontier life. His wound from the battle healed cleanly, though it added another scar to his collection and gave him a new story to tell during long winter evenings. "Boss, got that telegram from the territorial governor you were expecting?" Cole reads the official document with satisfaction. The territory is offering him a position as regional marshal, recognizing both his proven abilities and his commitment to legitimate law enforcement. It's an honor, but not one he intends to accept. "Turning it down?" Mabel asks, reading his expression. "Accurately. Already have the job I want." Cole folds the telegram and tucks it into his shirt pocket. "Raising cattle, raising our son, and building something that'll last." That evening, after Sheriff Morrison has departed and the evening chores are completed, Cole and Mabel sit on the front porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Thomas sleeps contentedly in his mother's arms, his tiny fingers wrapped around one of Cole's calloused digits. "Do you ever regret it?" Mabel asks quietly. "Giving up your peaceful retirement to get involved with a pregnant woman's problems?" Cole considers the question seriously. "I regret that Quinn chose violence over redemption. I regret that good men like Deputy Williams died because of one man's selfish rage. But getting involved with you," he turns to meet her eyes, "that was the smartest thing I ever did. Even though it cost you your quiet life, Mabel, I spent 5 years building walls around myself, trying to pretend that isolation was the same thing as peace. You showed me the difference between hiding from life and actually living it." Thomas stirs in his sleep, making small, contented sounds that seem to comment on his parents' conversation. In a few years, he'll ask questions about his father's past, about the circumstances of his birth, about why some men choose violence while others choose love. Cole looks forward to those conversations, to sharing the hard-won wisdom that came from learning to distinguish between necessary violence and senseless brutality. A new photograph sits on the mantelpiece inside, a formal portrait taken during their last trip to Santa Fe. Cole, Mabel, and 6-month-old Thomas, dressed in their best clothes and wearing expressions of quiet contentment. It's the image of a family that exists because two people chose courage over fear, love over hatred, hope over despair. As the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Cole reflects on the journey that brought them to this moment. 5 years ago, he thought redemption meant leaving his violent past behind. Now he understands that true redemption comes from using that past to protect something precious: family, justice, the innocent who cannot protect themselves. Somewhere, in the distance, a coyote calls to its mate, the sound carrying across the desert like a promise that life continues, that tomorrow brings new possibilities for those brave enough to embrace them. In his wife's arms, their son sleeps peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams come to infants, born into a world where love conquered cruelty through the simple act of refusing to surrender. It's a good beginning for a life that will, God willing, know more joy than sorrow, more building than tearing down. The story that made the world cry has found its ending, not in tragedy, but in the quiet triumph of ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things for love.